Hello, welcome back to the channel. Now today I'm going to try something a little bit different to anything I've really done before, but it's been something I wanted to try for a while, and that's kind of do a review of something I've watched. I've recently watched Stranger Things, like a lot of people, and I wanted to portray my thoughts and opinions on the most recent series, and kind of create sort of speculation in a way for what I think could happen next, and what in my opinion I'd like to happen next. Now these views might be shared by some people may not, and I think that's something I really need to just sort of say, is that this video of course is purely my opinion, really purely my sort of view on the series and kind of my idea of what I'd like to happen next. So if you want to put your own opinions and stuff down below, do feel free. It would be great to sort of hear what other people are perhaps thinking based on the series. Now I am going to go into detail a little bit about the series, so probably good to say if you haven't yet caught up to not watch this video, just because I won't want to spoil it for anyone who is yet to finish it. It was a really good series overall. I think something that I've seen a lot online is I've seen a lot of mixed reviews, and I think it was good. I don't think it was perhaps as good as the hype. Like, it was certainly, out of the 3 parts for Series 5, I felt the final part wasn't the strongest. I think, you know, it could have been better in my opinion, and I know that some people won't like that, because to them it was perfect, you know, it was the perfect ending, perfect series, and I think that's the thing, is it certainly wasn't this awful ending, and it certainly could have been a lot worse, and I wouldn't even say it was rubbish at all, because it wasn't rubbish, that's a bit harsh. I feel there were things it was missing, and one of them, which I want to touch upon, is I think it could have been even more emotional. Like, it was emotional anyway. I think it was that emotional feeling of, you know, it's the end, it's wrapping up, you know, everybody's gone their separate ways, everybody's grown up, and I think that was nice. And that sort of feeling of, you know, you weren't sad because something bad's happened at the end, it was sad because of it was the end. But I feel it could have been more emotional, and kind of I feel the hype that it generated when like series like part 1 and 2 came out, and then sort of in the build-up to part, like the finale part, they really made it seem like this was going to be like a massive like killing spree of like characters. And whilst I'm kind of glad that nobody really got killed off, I think it would have been a more definite ending, I think, for it to be if somebody had perhaps been killed off. Now, I know you could argue that 11 technically got killed off, but there's that whole theory now of she wasn't killed off and she moved away sort of elsewhere. Now, I do want to touch upon 11 and her sort of scenario in a little bit more detail in a moment, but as I say, I think it certainly would have just been better to kill someone off, and you know, just to make it a little bit more emotional, just to sort of give it a little bit more of that like definitive, like, you know, you built up for like this one last adventure, and it's kind of almost, I think they were really building up for there's going to be a death, there's going to be like somebody's going to, that nobody wants to go is going to go, and instead it was kind of like this big build up to then, yeah, we all made it, we all went through to university, and which is great in a way. And obviously it's not nice to kill people off in programs, and that probably sounds a bit sinister, being like, oh, there wasn't a death, but like it kind of built up to this big finale that I just kind of feel it didn't really have. Definitely set up for spin-off. I think personally there was two ideas they could go for a spin-off. I've not really seen much online regarding spin-off. I know there has been theories and sort of things were said, you know, I think like there's interviews with like the actors that have been like, oh, you know, we've sort of mentioned this to the Duffer Brothers. I think it'd be great if there was some sort of spin-off with the kids, you know, at the end when they're the new set of kids are playing the new campaign, and they're sort of there getting like setting their like put like session up. But I don't know if that's too obvious. I feel that would be great, but then is that a bit too obvious? Like, are we almost, would they set up instead like a spin-off with like the military guys, or do we have like a spin-off for like, do we sort of go back to like the Papa days where, you know, you have like beginning the program where Elle was born, and sort of more of that, which I know I think there's kind of been things that have touched upon that online a little bit, but there are quite a few possibilities for there to be some sort of spin-off. I think that's quite exciting, because I still felt like there is a lot of questions that I had before watching the finale that sadly I still have. I feel that it didn't answer things like there were characters missing or characters just disappeared. You know, like the Demogorgons. I'm really butchering the pronunciation now, but the Demogorgon guard things. Demogorgon. That's really bugging. What is it? Demogorgons. Demogorgons. I'm gonna have to Google it. This is appalling. I do apologise. It's Demogorgon. Demogorgon. You know what I'm trying to say, but I feel that they just kind of vanished, and I know that like they said that they'd killed a lot of those off already, but still I think that would have just made it a little bit more epic. Like, I kind of feel like the finale, they built it up to be like this big Avengers Endgame style, like Infinity War, where they had all the portals opening in this big battle scene. They kind of built it up to be that, but instead it was just sort of like, oh, Vecna's been killed, we're in. Like, I feel that they could have had a few more layers to like get into Vecna, you know, as opposed to just, oh well, we've had a couple of Demogorgons come, and then sort of we've had to kill a few other people, but there wasn't really like that big like layer. It was just sort of, oh yeah, we killed a couple, we're in, Vecna's been killed. Even that wasn't massively a battle. Like, to put it out there, it was, don't get me wrong, it was a battle, but it certainly wasn't like this big, you know, big battle of like near death. And again, not to be the sinister one, it just seemed too easy. And I'm not saying I could go and do it, but it just seemed to be beefed up to be this big thing. Yeah, I think there's too many unanswered questions, and you could almost go in with the sort of statement that it felt rushed. You know, I think considering how long we've been waiting for this new sort of latest series to come out with the actor strikes, with the writing strike, that it just felt like a rushed series, to be honest. And I think I kind of like how at the beginning of the video I said, oh, I really enjoyed it and I couldn't slate it, and I've pretty much then sat here and slated it for the last 10 minutes or so. But I feel that like it wasn't as good as people hoped. I didn't think it was as great as it could have been. You know, it wasn't awful, but there's certainly areas it could have improved. Going back to sort of having, you know, the spin-offs, I think not only could you do them about like Papa and all like his scheme, I think the military, they could have gone into that a little bit more than they did. Whether they sort of have plans to, I don't, you know, who knows. And I think, you know, they could almost go and like continue either, as I say, the new kids stories. I feel that, as I say, would be a little bit too obvious. I feel we've kind of done that with the kids, with the D&D campaign. And perhaps another spin-off could be to sort of go into like Elle, and sort of if she has, you know, sort of survived and moved to this new area, you know, I almost have it as like, is she living an ordinary life, or does she sort of live an ordinary life and then something happens where she becomes, sort of gets discovered as not being this ordinary new girl in town, but instead it's like this, well, this person or this creature she is. You know, there's so many possibilities, and I feel overall there's still so much more they could do with it, so it is quite an exciting prospect to kind of know that they could still be doing stuff with it. I'm hoping they're still going to be doing stuff with it. I don't think this is the exact end of the Stranger Things universe. I'd like to think we're maybe not on the terms of Marvel side, you know, scale of things, but certainly like I don't think this is just what we're going to get. I'd like to think there's perhaps going to sort of be more to come. I think to round off, I didn't hate it. I think despite sort of having a lot of negative things to say, I think I was glad that they didn't kill in the sort of characters like Steve Harrington, Will. You know, I really had sort of worries before watching the finale that those two might not make it to the end. I think, you know, Dustin, again, Lucas, Mike, I think if any of them had been killed off, it would have been horrendous, and it would have probably been like the worst series ever then, because everybody loved them, and they were like the main guys. I think the same with Max as well. I like how her character sort of got more of a say now in that series, and just, I think, yeah, it wasn't horrendous, it wasn't bad, it had so many good points, and I think the good points do, in my opinion, outweigh the bad points. But I think, as I've touched upon in this video, there are just, I think, so many different doors and elements that they could have explored more, and for whatever reason they didn't. For that, I think if I had to rate it out of 10, which would be difficult, I'd probably give it something like an 8 to an 8.5 out of 10. just because, as I say, it wasn't horrendous, it wasn't hated, but I wouldn't say I love it. It's sort of just in the middle, perhaps. So yeah, I'm going to round this off here. I hope you've enjoyed, and as I say, if you do have any sort of thoughts on my opinions on it, or you want to put your own opinion of the show down below, then please do. I appreciate any sort of likes, comments and things like that. And if you like this sort of video, sort of style of video of me sort of talking about things I've watched and kind of necessarily ranting about them, like if you'd like to see me rant in a weird way, then make sure to subscribe and do all the usual things down below. And I'll be back very soon with another video. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you are new and you want to subscribe, please do. And I'll see you all in the next video very soon. Goodbye.